Hello everyone, I am the storyteller and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. Clara sat in the passenger seat of the moving van, eyes drifting across the winding forest road. Trees blurred into one another, dark green smudges under the gray sky. The driver, a man with thick sideburns and the smell of coffee clinging to his flannel, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You sure about moving out here alone?" he asked. Clara smiled politely. "Yes. Needed a change. It's peaceful." He grunted, unconvinced. "It's quiet, all right. That house has been empty a long time. Folks say it's hard to keep warm in winter. Like it breathes in cold." She didn't respond. She didn't want to hear more. People always had something to say about old houses, ghost stories to fill the silence. Clara was used to quiet. She wanted it. The house emerged between the trees like a tired old animal, 2 stories, peaked roof, wood siding weathered into a silvery gray. A porch sagged slightly on one side, and above it, a single window stared blankly like an unblinking eye. Still, something about it felt intact. Waiting. The inside smelled of dust and wood rot. As Clara stepped through the threshold, the floor groaned under her boots. A chandelier hung crooked in the foyer, cobwebs lacing its arms. Light filtered in through warped glass windows, softened by grime. The hallway ran straight through the center of the house, lined with doors, 2 on the left, 1 on the right. Opposite the front door, just before the stairs, a large mirror was mounted to the wall. She paused there, blinking at her reflection. The mirror was old, ornate gold trim, the glass slightly clouded with age. It gave the hallway a false sense of depth, like the house stretched longer inside it. "Creepy thing," the driver muttered as he walked past with her last box. "Why not cover it?" "I don't mind it," Clara said absently, staring at the reflection. She could see herself, the doors behind her, and the dim hallway. But something about the image didn't quite sit right. The mirror seemed too deep. That night, after she unpacked a few essentials and made tea on the stubborn old stove, Clara stood brushing her teeth in the bathroom and caught herself glancing toward the hallway, toward the mirror. She shrugged it off. Fatigue. But when she passed it on her way to the bedroom, she stopped. There were 4 doors reflected in the glass. She turned. 2 on the left, 1 on the right. Just as before. She turned back to the mirror. 4 doors. 1 more than there should be. Clara leaned forward. The glass showed a 4th door, farthest down the left-hand wall. It didn't look new. It looked old. As old as the others. Its knob was black and heavy-looking, like iron. She frowned, stepped backward, and glanced down the hallway again. 3 doors. She even walked down and opened each one: a guest room, a linen closet, and her office. Back at the mirror, the 4th door was still there. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't imagination. The reflection showed more than it should. Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her room dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through gauzy curtains. The air felt colder than it had earlier, sharper somehow, as though something crept beneath the floorboards and exhaled chill through the cracks. Eventually, she got up. Wrapped in a blanket, she padded out into the hallway again. The floor was cold under her bare feet, but she barely noticed. Her eyes found the mirror almost instinctively. There it was. The 4th door. It wasn't an illusion. Not a beam of shadow or a misplaced curtain. The door was there, solid in the reflection, though absent in real life. She touched the mirror. Cold. Colder than glass should have been. Almost like ice. And as she pressed her fingers to it, she thought, just for a breath, that the reflection shimmered. "Stop it," she whispered to herself, pulling her hand back. "You're just tired." But curiosity nestled inside her now, growing roots. The next morning, she brought a notebook to the mirror. She stared at the 4th door for a long time, then sketched it: arch top, iron knob, chipped paint the color of ash. She knocked lightly on the mirror surface. No sound from within. No change. But as she turned to leave, she heard something behind her. Just a soft sound. A shift. A whisper of movement like fabric dragging across wood. She spun back. Nothing there. The hallway was still. The mirror unchanged. Later that day, she called her friend May. "It's weird," Clara admitted over the phone. There's this mirror in the hallway, and it's showing a door that isn't there. I know it sounds stupid, but it's in the reflection. Every time I look." There was a pause. Then May laughed. "So your haunted house has a haunted mirror. That's kind of perfect, actually." "I'm serious." May's tone softened. I know. Could just be stress, though. New place, old building, your brain's adjusting." Clara wanted to believe that. That night, the dreams came. She walked down the hallway endlessly in them, the mirror on one side, doors multiplying on the other. They opened and closed silently, and a soft humming followed her, coming from everywhere and nowhere. When she woke, her feet were cold. Her blanket had been dragged halfway across the room. And in the hallway, the mirror was fogged, as though someone had breathed on the other side. Over the next few days, Clara tried to ignore the mirror. She kept busy, hanging curtains, stacking books on shelves, setting up her desk in the room she designated as an office. She even baked, filling the house with the smell of cinnamon and vanilla, hoping to bury the musty old scent that seemed to linger no matter how much she cleaned. But every time she passed the hallway, her eyes flicked toward the mirror. The fourth door remained. Always in the same place. Always shut. She covered it once, with an old bedsheet, pinned at the corners. For a time, that helped. But on the third night after doing so, Clara was woken by a faint noise. Knock. She sat up, heart suddenly alert. She waited, holding her breath. Knock. Knock. Rhythmic. Deliberate. She got up and crept into the hallway. The house was silent. Moonlight filtered in faintly through the window at the end of the hall, giving the mirror, still veiled in white, a ghostly shape. She stepped closer. The knocking came again. From inside the mirror. Clara froze, her mouth suddenly dry. The knocks were muffled, but undeniably real. Not in her head. She reached out and touched the sheet. It was cold. Very slowly, she pulled the fabric away. The mirror was no longer fogged. The fourth door in the reflection loomed larger than before, closer somehow. Like the hallway inside the mirror had shortened, just a bit. And then... tap. A finger. Inside the mirror. It pressed against the other side of the glass, just for a moment. Pale. Long. It left a small smudge where it touched, like breath on glass. Clara stumbled back. Her foot caught the corner of the rug, and she nearly fell. She fled back to her room, slammed the door, and locked it. She didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, she tried to call May again. But the call wouldn't connect. Her phone buzzed with full signal, yet every attempt dropped or rang endlessly. She thought about leaving. Getting in her car and driving back to the city. But something stopped her. The same quiet stubbornness that brought her here in the first place. Instead, she made herself coffee, sat on the floor of the hallway. She said aloud, "You're a trick." The mirror didn't answer. But the smudge was still there. A perfect outline of a fingertip. The fingertip smudge stayed on the mirror for days. Clara tried to clean it once, sprayed glass cleaner onto a towel, wiped in careful circles, but the smudge wouldn't vanish. It was beneath the surface. Not on the mirror, but in it. She stopped trying. Instead, she watched. She started bringing a chair into the hallway, sitting across from the mirror at dusk. At first she felt foolish, like someone waiting for ghosts to do tricks. But something told her, this wasn't a trick. This was a pattern. And the mirror, like some strange clock, would show its next shift in time. On the fourth evening, she noticed it. The door in the mirror was ajar. Only slightly. A crack. But open. And beyond it, a room. It wasn't one of hers. She knew every room in the house. This one had dark wood floors and old wallpaper patterned with faded vines. A high-backed chair sat near a fireplace, unlit. On the mantel, a clock. An actual clock, with a brass frame and a white face, its hands frozen at 3:12. She leaned closer, squinting into the glass. Then the chair moved. Only slightly. The back tilted, like someone had just stood from it. But there was no one there. She stared harder, her breath shallow. Movement. A shadow, just barely visible, passed in front of the fireplace. Too tall. Too thin. She gasped and stepped back. The door in the mirror creaked open a little wider. That night, Clara spoke to the mirror. She didn't plan to, not really. But as she sat before it in the growing dark, she whispered, "Who are you?" The mirror stayed silent. But the door remained ajar. She tried again the next night. "Why do you watch me?" This time, the lights in the house flickered. Once. Just a pulse. The bulbs buzzed faintly afterward, like they were listening. On the sixth day, she placed an object in front of the mirror. A silver spoon. She watched it. In the reflection, the spoon was warped. Elongated. Twisted like it had melted. She touched the real spoon. Cold. Perfectly normal. And yet, in the mirror, it quivered slightly. Then she saw something new. In the far corner of the reflected room, just past the fourth door, there was now a second mirror. Smaller. Framed in black. And in that mirror, she saw herself. But her reflection wasn't moving. Clara couldn't look away. In the mirror within the mirror, the version of her, her reflection, stood perfectly still. Not frozen like a paused video, but deliberately unmoving, as though it were waiting for something. Watching. She raised her hand slowly. The reflection didn't mimic her. It stared back. Clara recoiled, knocking over her chair. The clatter echoed down the hallway, sharp and lonely. "Nope," she whispered, backing away. "No, no, no." She fled to the kitchen, trembling fingers fumbling with the kettle. She made tea she didn't drink. Paced the floor. Her breathing didn't even out until the sun had fully set. That night, she left every light on in the house. She didn't look into the hallway. She kept her bedroom door shut, locked, and jammed a chair under the knob. Childish, maybe. But necessary. She barely slept. By morning, the sense of dread had dulled but not left her. It was like a headache behind her eyes. A pressure. Clara told herself she had to leave. Now. Before this thing got worse. She packed a bag, shoved her laptop, charger, and a few clothes into it, and headed for the front door. The doorknob wouldn't turn. She twisted harder. Locked. She hadn't locked it. She grabbed the keys off the hook and jammed them into the lock. Nothing. They wouldn't turn. As if the key no longer fit. She stood there for several seconds, stunned. Then she went to the back door. Same thing. Locked. Impassable. She tried a window, pushing, pulling, even striking one with the heel of her hand. The old wood frames groaned but wouldn't budge. It was as if the house had sealed itself. Trapped. She screamed into the silence. Loud and raw. It echoed, then vanished. Back in the hallway, the mirror was waiting. The fourth door in the reflection now stood fully open. The room beyond was brighter now, lit by a fire that cast long shadows. And the chair? The one she'd seen move? Now someone sat in it. A man, dressed in a long coat, his face in shadow. Still. Too still. And in that smaller mirror behind him, the reflection of Clara was smiling. Clara didn't approach the mirror that evening. She sat in the living room, curtains drawn tight, a fire she barely remembered lighting flickering in the hearth. Every sound made her twitch, the creak of the settling floorboards, the occasional pop of expanding wood in the walls, the hiss of the wind outside. She felt watched. Not just from the mirror, but from every corner of the house. As though the entire place was listening, waiting. She tried calling May again. This time, the call connected. "Oh my God," finally, Clara breathed. May. But the voice that answered wasn't May. It was her own. Only slower. Duller. As if coming from a throat unused to speech. "Hello, Clara." She dropped the phone. It clattered against the wood floor and went dark. When she picked it up, the screen had cracked, and the battery was drained, completely dead. Panic spiraled through her chest. "No," she said aloud, as if naming the fear would banish it. "No, this is not real. I need sleep. I need air." But the doors remained locked. The windows unyielding. She had one choice left. The hallway. Clara approached it like a soldier nearing the battlefield. The mirror shimmered faintly, light catching in the glass like it had a pulse. Inside the reflection, the firelight in the other room danced. The man in the chair hadn't moved. But something else had changed. There was now a second figure. Behind the chair, half obscured in shadow, stood a tall shape. Its features were indistinct, but its form was unmistakably human. Thin limbs, a too long neck, hands hanging motionless at its sides. It didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Clara leaned closer. "What do you want from me?" The man in the chair turned his head. Just a fraction. Just enough. His face was pale, smooth like wax. His eyes were black, not empty, Not sockets, but filled with something that absorbed light. Something that pulled inward. The mirror grew colder. The air around her felt thinner. And then, the lights in the house went out. Every bulb, every lamp. A breath of wind whispered past her cheek, though every door remained shut. She turned back toward her room, toward safety, or the illusion of it. And found the hallway behind her had changed. The reflection was no longer a reflection. It was the hallway itself, extended, deepened, stretched into impossible geometry. And in that impossible hallway, the fourth door was open. And something was stepping through. The thing that stepped through the fourth door didn't move like a person. It unfolded. Its limbs were long and wrong, bending in places human joints couldn't bend. It had no face, only the idea of one. A smooth, glistening absence where eyes and a mouth might be. Its body shimmered, indistinct, like it existed just slightly out of sync with the world. Clara backed away. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're not real. You're not real." But her heels hit the wall. The hallway was longer than it had been, and yet she was already at the end of it. Trapped. The figure moved toward her, slow but steady. Not walking, gliding. Every flicker of candlelight in the mirror flared as it passed, as if the flames were afraid. Behind it, the man in the chair still sat, unmoving. And then, the Clara in the small, second mirror. She stood. She moved forward too, but inside the reflection. Her face now wore a perfect imitation of Clara's panic. And then, that smile returned. Not warm. Predatory. "You are the one who looked." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere. It wasn't the creature's voice. It wasn't the man's. It was Clara's, coming from the walls, the floors, from inside the glass. "You saw the door. You believed in it." The reflection. Clara pressed her hand to the inside of the mirror. Clara could see every detail now, the same chipped nail polish, the same freckle under her eye. She touched the glass. And this time, the glass gave way. Like water. Like breath. Her hand passed through. "No." Clara jerked back, but it was too late. The creature reached her first. Its fingers wrapped around her wrist, ice cold, but solid. Real. And gently, impossibly gently, it pulled. She screamed as her body was drawn forward. Into the mirror. Into the impossible hallway. The glass rippled and closed behind her like a curtain pulled shut. The lights in the house flickered once. Then steadied. The mirror showed nothing now but a hallway. 3 doors. No fourth. And standing in the hallway, on this side of the glass, was Clara. Or something that looked like her. She turned, glanced at the mirror, and smiled. Just enough to show that whatever had come through wasn't the Clara who went in. The new Clara, whatever she was, didn't explore the house. She didn't speak. She moved from room to room with quiet purpose, examining objects like a stranger studying unfamiliar customs. She touched the wallpaper, ran her fingers across spines of books, opened drawers as if searching for something remembered. But most of the time, she stood in front of the mirror. Watching. On the other side, the hallway still existed. That impossible reflection, with its endless stretch and its ancient, flickering firelight. The fourth door, now closed again, loomed in the distance like a sealed tomb. There was no sign of the real Clara. But sometimes, a sound would come through, just faintly. A soft scratching. Breathing. A muffled knock from far behind the door. And once, only once, a scream so faint it seemed almost imagined. May arrived 2 days later. Clara, the new Clara, answered the door with a smile. May raised a brow. "God, I was starting to think you died in there." "What, no signal out here? I texted you like 5 times." "I've been busy," Clara replied, her voice quiet, her eyes too still. May laughed. "You sound like you've seen a ghost." Clara smiled wider. "Something like that." May stepped inside, frowning. "It smells weird. Kind of like old wood and charcoal?" The new Clara said nothing. May wandered toward the hallway. "So where's this creepy mirror you were telling me about? I want to see what all the fuss is." Clara's hand shot out, gripping her arm. Too tight. Cold. May froze. Okay? You good?" Clara blinked. The grip loosened. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You shouldn't look into it." May stared at her, unsettled now. She laughed. but there was no real humor in it. "You're freaking me out." Clara said nothing, only turned her head toward the hallway. The mirror sat in its alcove, waiting. And from somewhere deep inside, past the fourth door, something knocked. That night, May couldn't sleep. She'd planned to stay just one night, check in on Clara, maybe coax her back to the city. But something about the house felt wrong. It was in the air, the walls, the quiet. The way shadows stretched too far across the floors. The way every floorboard creaked like it had a voice trying to form words. But most of all, it was Clara. She barely spoke. She moved stiffly, like her joints weren't used to bending. Her eyes, once expressive and darting, now stared too long at nothing, as if she was listening to something no one else could hear. May lay on the couch with her coat still on, staring at the ceiling, sleep far out of reach. And then, just past 2 a.m., she heard footsteps. Not Clara's. Slower. Heavier. They moved down the hallway beyond the living room. May sat up, holding her breath. The mirror. She crept toward the hallway, phone light shaking in her hand. The mirror was glowing faintly. Not reflecting. Emitting light, from within. She stepped closer. There was the fourth door again, open wide. And beyond it, a room. Wood walls, firelight, the man in the chair. He stood now. He turned toward the mirror. He had Clara's face. But it wasn't Clara. Its eyes were hollow, not sockets but caverns. Its smile too wide, stretching as though skin were a mere suggestion. May turned to run. But a second figure was already standing behind her. Clara. Or what had once worn her name. "Did you look?" it whispered. May screamed, but the thing was already pushing her forward. Into the mirror. The glass rippled like water. Swallowed her whole. And then the hallway was quiet again. The mirror showed only the familiar stretch of 3 doors. No fourth. No firelight. Just the still, ordinary house. In the reflection, a new figure stood where May had been. She smiled at her own reflection. And somewhere, beyond walls and glass and thought, the real Clara still screamed. But no one could hear her anymore. May's scream faded as the glass sealed behind her. The house grew still. The figure that looked like May stood in the hallway, tilting her head as if listening. Behind her, Clara watched with folded hands and empty patience. "She's quieter than you were," Clara said. May's double didn't respond. She stepped forward, stretching her limbs, as if becoming accustomed to her new form. Her eyes blinked once, slow, reptilian, and then she smiled. "It won't take long," she said. "It's already inside her." Together, the two imposters walked down the hallway and into the kitchen, their footsteps out of sync, like the beat of 2 songs played just slightly off rhythm. Outside, the sky had begun to turn violet, not with dawn, but with something older. Something patient. Something watching back. Deep within the mirror, May ran. The hallway was endless. The doors on either side of her were blank, no knobs, no hinges, no seams. Just the idea of doors. As if the mirror itself had constructed a maze not made of logic, but of memory. She called Clara's name until her throat was raw. Something moved in the distance. It didn't chase. It followed. May came to a room at last, the firelit one from the mirror. The chair sat empty now, smoke curling from a dead fireplace. The air buzzed, thick and heavy like the moment before a storm breaks. A whisper, close to her ear. "Do you remember when you looked away?" May spun. No one there. A mirror sat above the mantel. In it, she saw herself, hair wild, eyes wide. Then, her reflection smiled. But May hadn't. The mirror cracked. Just a thin line, running from brow to chin on her twin's face. The reflection whispered. "Your face is only borrowed. Leave it here." The crack widened. May screamed again. Then turned and ran. Somewhere behind her, doors were beginning to open. Back in the real world, the new Clara and new May sat at the kitchen table. May's voice was calm. "I think we should invite others." Clara sipped her tea. "Yes. Visitors help it grow." They looked toward the hallway, where the mirror waited. Still. Unmoving. Innocent. But inside it, something moved. Something many-faced. Something that no longer remembered who it used to be. They invited Julian first. He was an easy choice, May's friend from grad school, soft-spoken, polite, and always curious. He had a habit of showing up for people in need. So when May texted him that she was worried about Clara, He replied in seconds. Julian. On my way. Should I bring anything? May. Just yourself. She needs someone who remembers her. That night, the house greeted him with fog and silence. The trees surrounding the property had grown somehow taller. Or closer. They leaned in ways trees shouldn't. Julian knocked on the door. May answered. She looked different. She smiled too easily. Her skin was slightly pale, but her eyes were too bright, like someone was shining a light behind them. He didn't recognize the feeling until later, but in that moment, something ancient stirred in the back of his brain. Predator. Hey, she said. Come in. Clara appeared in the hallway, her steps measured, her gaze fixed. You came, she said. Julian smiled awkwardly, stepping inside. Yeah, of course. You okay? You've been off-grid. May closed the door behind him. Locked it. We've just been finding ourselves again, she said. Clara nodded slowly. There's something we want to show you. Julian frowned. Okay, sure. What is it? They led him to the hallway. The mirror stood waiting. I remember this, Julian said, stepping closer. Didn't your great-aunt own this before she passed? Clara said nothing. The mirror flickered. Julian blinked. What was that? He leaned in. Behind the reflection, the hallway stretched deeper than it should. A fourth door stood open. From within came a faint sound, a voice. Familiar. His voice. Clara? He whispered. Is this a trick? She didn't answer. And from behind him, May whispered, look closer. Julian leaned forward. The glass flexed. And something took hold of his reflection's hand. Julian yanked his hand back from the mirror. It was too late. The glass didn't just reflect now, it responded. As he pulled away, the cold sensation followed him, like oil slicking up his wrist. His skin felt wrong. Thinner. He looked down and saw faint shapes, tiny impressions of fingers pressing outward from inside his palm. Something was inside. May and Clara watched with serene detachment. What the hell is this? Julian backed away. What did you do to me? May tilted her head. You touched it. You heard your voice, Clara added, softly. That's how it begins. Julian's breath came fast. His heart hammered in his chest. You've lost it, he whispered. Both of you. He ran. Or tried to. The hallway warped. The corners stretched and blurred. The front door seemed farther than before. His legs carried him forward, but the air thickened like syrup. The mirror's presence pulled at his spine, not with hands, but with gravity. With will. The house wasn't letting go. He threw open the door. Outside, the trees had changed. Where there had once been branches and bark, there were now faces. Half-formed, yawning, pressing outward through the trunks as if screaming against bark and time. Their mouths opened, silently gasping for air that no longer belonged to them. Julian staggered back inside. Behind him, Clara and May were waiting. May smiled. You'll sleep soon. It always happens after the voice returns. Julian shook his head. What voice? You'll know it when you hear it, Clara said. That night, he slept fitfully on the couch, sweating through every layer. His dreams were endless corridors. Doors slamming. Mirrors breaking inward. He kept seeing himself, pulling at his face, peeling it off, revealing layer after layer, and beneath all of it, nothing. And then he heard it. Not outside. Not in the house. Inside him, a voice, his own, speaking from the hollow place behind his eyes. Let me wear you for a while. Julian didn't wake screaming. He woke still. As if the scream had already happened, long ago, and now only its echo remained. The morning light, if it was morning, dripped through the windows like spoiled milk. Heavy. Yellowed. The shadows it cast were longer than the objects that made them. He sat up. Clara and May weren't in the room. The house was silent again. But something was off. He rubbed his eyes. The skin beneath them tugged unnaturally, almost rubbery. His tongue felt thick in his mouth. When he moved to stand, he noticed the rug beneath his feet was soaked. Damp with something dark, sticky. He looked down. It wasn't water. It was black. Viscous. Reflective. Like the surface of the mirror. He took an uneasy step into the hallway. The walls pulsed. He could feel them breathe. As if the house were alive now. Alone, inhaling him slowly. The mirror was waiting. It didn't shimmer anymore. It glowed, faintly, with a pulse, matching his heartbeat. He approached it without realizing. In the glass, his reflection looked calmer than him. Its head tilted as he came near, slowly, lovingly. Then it whispered, "It's better this way." Julian staggered back. "No," he said aloud. "No, I'm still me." But the words didn't feel real. They tasted wrong. As if someone else had spoken through his throat. He ran to the bathroom, flicked on the light. His face stared back from the mirror, but there were extra lines, too many shadows around his jaw, eyes too large, too black. He pressed his hand to the glass. The mirror didn't ripple this time. It opened. Just a little. A whisper of breath escaped it, warm and damp. Julian stared into his own eyes. And the thing inside said again, "Let me wear you." Then, very gently, it reached through the mirror and touched his cheek. It had no name. It never did, not even in the beginning, when it first opened its eyes in the black. Names were for those who belonged to time. This place, this space behind the mirror, was before time. Beneath it, a stillness so deep it drowned thought and flattened memory like bone under stone. And now, something new had arrived. She was called May. At least, that's what the thought form drifting in her core told the echoing dark. May ran through the corridor, over and over, always toward a door that was no longer there. She had stopped screaming days ago, at least by the rhythms here, where days were marked not by light but by the beating pulse of the house on the other side. Each beat was a breath of it. The thing in the chair. The voice in the glass. The man in the mirror. May rested now, curled in a room that did not have a shape until she entered it. When she closed her eyes, the walls became her childhood bedroom. When she opened them again, it became the basement where she once hid from her mother's violent boyfriend. The space was made of her fears, her guilt, her mistakes. It fed on what she remembered, and it especially fed on what she tried to forget. In the corner of the room was a mirror. It followed her wherever she went. Sometimes she'd see herself in it, older, thinner, more feral. Other times she'd see her friends. Clara, Julian, even her father, dead 10 years. Sometimes, she'd see her own reflection smile when she wasn't. Tonight, the mirror shimmered. May stood and approached. Behind the glass, a hallway again. But this time, the hallway was full of people. They wore her face. All of them. And they all said in perfect, overlapping unison, "One of us is the real you." May turned to run, but behind her, the door she had come through was gone. And something breathed against her neck. May ran, but the hallway ran with her. Every door she passed opened for a moment, not wide, but just enough for an eye, a hand, or something less describable to peer out. They didn't reach for her. Not yet. They simply watched. Judging. Measuring. After some time, or what passed for it here, May fell. Not from exhaustion, but from the hallway itself ceasing to exist. The floor crumbled under her feet like ash. The walls turned to mist. And suddenly, there was no up, no down, just falling. Endlessly falling through memory. She landed on cold tile. Concrete walls. Harsh light flickering from a single bulb overhead. The air smelled of bleach and rot. May stood slowly. She was in a hospital. No, not a real one. Something built from fragments. The kind you only half remember from childhood fevers. Stretched corridors. Rooms numbered wrong. Shadows that didn't belong to anything visible. Hello, electronic buzzing filled the air, like flatlining heart monitors. And then, footsteps. Click. 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 Steady. Unhurried, May backed away as a figure turned the corner. It wore her father's face. He looked exactly as she remembered him in his coffin, sunken cheeks, lips sewn shut, skin gray. But his eyes moved. He smiled. "May," he said gently. "It's been so long. You've gotten so thin." She shook her head, stepping back. "You're not real. You're not real." The thing wearing his face sighed. "Oh, I'm real enough. Realer than the things you lie to yourself about." He reached toward her, fingers long, impossibly so, stretching like wet paper. "Come here, baby girl. Let's take this face off, see what you're hiding underneath." May screamed. The walls screamed with her. And from the corners of the room, the others began together. Clara. Julian. May again. And again. And again. All of them smiling. All of them whispering. You brought this on yourself. May ran until her legs gave out. But there was no distance here. Just depth, and she was falling into it. She collapsed on what felt like stone but moved like flesh. The floor beneath her pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat far below the surface. The air was thick. Metallic. Every breath tasted like rust and static. Above her, the copy circled. Whispering her regrets. Her fears. Her secrets. She pressed her palms to her ears and screamed, "Stop." Everything did. Silence collapsed in around her like a black hole. She looked up, and found herself alone again. Except now, the room had changed. It wasn't a hospital anymore. Not a hallway. Not any place she'd seen before. It was a chamber. The walls curved like the inside of a skull. Or an egg. The mirror stood in the center, not on a wall, but freestanding, floating slightly above the ground, spinning slowly. And beneath it, something slept. A mass. A shape made of darkness and light, wrapped in flickers of faces, hers, Clara's, Julian's, others she didn't know. It pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm. Dreaming. May tried to speak, but the words died in her throat. Then, it opened its eyes. There were no pupils. No whites. Just voids. Each eye was a mirror, and in each, she saw another self, crying, begging, changing, becoming. The thing rose. Not on limbs. On will. And when it spoke, it didn't use sound. It used memory. May suddenly remembered. The time she lied to her mother and blamed her sister for the broken window. The night she ignored a friend's call, just before he tried to take his own life. The tiny, cruel things she'd done. Forgotten. Buried. They rose now, played in her mind, burned into her skin like brands. And the voice said, "You shaped me with your shame. You fed me with your reflection. Now, we're me." The mirror spun faster. The faces in it screamed. Not out of pain, but joy. They were free. May was not. The thing opened its arms. And May. May took a step forward. May took another step. The chamber pulsed in time with her heartbeat. No, not hers anymore. It was syncing with something else. A larger rhythm. A hunger. She felt it building under her skin, in her bones, whispering in marrow and blood. "You've always belonged here." The massive eyes and faces before her split, ever so slightly, revealing a shape. It wasn't human. Not really. Its form was suggestion, limbs made from gesture, torso from fear. Every time she blinked, it looked different. Her mother. A wolf. Clara. A woman burning. A mirror. Herself. May sank to her knees. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why any of us?" The voice inside her now, deeper than thought, answered without mercy. "Because you look. Because you turn your head back. Because you stare into what should be left alone." The spinning mirror lowered toward her. She reached out, trembling, and her fingers grazed the surface. It didn't ripple. It accepted. Her fingertips passed through, and she felt warmth, then cold, then presence. From the chamber walls, the other selves began to chant in unison. "You are the vessel. You are the crack. You are the welcome mat at the door of all wrong things." The entity pressed forward. Its face became hers. Its smile stretched across both of them. May wanted to pull back. She really did. But a part of her, something deep, dark, buried in her since childhood, wanted this. To shed guilt. To give up choices. To dissolve into the truth that none of it ever mattered. The chamber shuddered. The mirror shattered outward. And May was gone. But something stood in her place. Not entirely her. Not entirely it. A new thing. A bridge. A reflection made flesh. The others bowed. And the face, May's face, smiled with new teeth. It spoke for the first time aloud. "I see you." Every mirror in the house cracked at once. Every clock stopped. And the hallway door slowly creaked open. Welcoming the next. The house had changed. Not in its structure, walls, floors, windows all remained, but in its atmosphere. The air was too still. The shadows too sharp. The ticking clock on the mantelpiece had stopped precisely at 3:33 a.m., and no one could get it working again. May came down the stairs. Julian was already sitting in the kitchen, his head bowed over a cup of untouched coffee. His eyes were red-rimmed, fingers trembling slightly as he turned a spoon in his hand again and again. He didn't look up when she entered. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice was wrong. Subtle, but wrong. Too smooth. Almost manufactured. Like someone trying to replicate her voice from memory. Julian finally looked at her. His pupils shrank. She looked like May. Spoke like her. Even moved like her. But something inside her eyes was too still. "May," he said slowly, "where's Clara?" May smiled. "Still sleeping. She needs time. We all do." Julian gripped the spoon tighter. "You didn't answer the question." "I did." Julian stood, knocking the chair over behind him. "I think I should go." May took a step forward. The lights in the kitchen dimmed without flicking. The shadows twisted slightly, almost imperceptibly, but Julian saw it. "You can't, Julian," she said. "You touched it. You let it in." He backed up. "You're not May." Her head tilted, too far. A slow, graceful tilt like a puppet whose strings were being pulled from behind a veil. She blinked once, twice, and then her face dropped the smile. "You're right," she said. The spoon fell from Julian's hand. May, whatever wore her, stepped closer. "But I remember everything she did. Everyone she hurt. Every secret she locked in her chest. I was fed on those. I am those." Julian turned and ran. Upstairs. Down the hall. The mirror was waiting. But it didn't show his reflection anymore. It showed Clara. Trapped. Screaming. Beating her fists on glass that no longer broke. Behind him, May's footsteps grew louder. Measured. Patient. "Let me show you what it means to be seen," she whispered. Clara had no idea how long she'd been here. Time didn't pass the same way. Her thoughts felt distant, as though filtered through a slow-moving fog. The air wasn't air, it was like liquid memory, thick and clinging to her lungs. She didn't breathe. Not really. But she gasped all the same, heart hammering out a rhythm she couldn't trust. The walls around her changed constantly. Sometimes, it was her old bedroom. Then it was the basement of the house she'd grown up in, where she swore she once saw something move in the dark when she was a child. At other times, she stood in a shapeless void where faces floated in the distance, whispering her name. The worst was the mirror. It stood in front of her wherever she went, mounted in invisible air. And on its surface, she saw May, or what wore her face, walking through the house. Talking to Julian. Smiling with teeth she never had. Clara banged her fists against the glass. "Julian. It's not her." But no one heard. Until the reflection shifted. May turned. And looked directly at her. A smile spread across May's face. Not cruel. Not mocking. Welcoming. Then, her voice filled the mirrored space, low and resonant. "You made your choice when you looked. You made your cage." Clara stepped back, shaking. "This isn't real," she whispered. "This isn't real." From behind, something moved. Not footsteps. Not wind. Breath. She turned slowly, too slowly, and found herself face to face with a perfect copy of herself. But this one was grinning. With sharpened teeth. Julian slammed the bedroom door shut, heart pounding, lungs burning. Downstairs, he could hear May climbing. One step at a time. Not fast. Not angry. Certain. He pushed the dresser in front of the door. It wouldn't hold. The mirror in the bedroom showed movement again. Clara's face. She was screaming. Her hands pounded the glass from the other side. Blood was smeared on the surface. Her eyes were pleading. "Hang on," he breathed. "Hang on, I'm going to get you out." He didn't know how. But he couldn't run. Not yet. Not until he knew what had happened to them. Not until he understood what it wanted. Behind the door, May's voice floated. "She can't hear you anymore, Julian." "But I can." And from the walls, the mirrors began to whisper. Clara's double grinned wider, teeth glinting sharp and unnatural, a smile that stretched too far. "You don't belong here," Clara said, voice trembling but fierce. "You're not me." The reflection's eyes narrowed. "But I'm what you hide. The part you refuse to see." The mirrored world rippled around them, walls melting into shards of glass that reflected every version of Clara, some terrified, some angry, some broken beyond repair. Clara's double lunged. Their forms collided, ripples of light and shadow exploding where they touched. Pain seared through Clara, not physical, but deep. Like being pulled apart from the inside. She fell back, gasping. The double leaned close, whispering, "The mirror doesn't lie. I'm real. You're just the light." Clara's eyes stung with tears, but she squared her shoulders. "No," she whispered fiercely. "You're a prison. And I'm breaking free." She slammed her palm against the glass. The mirror shattered. Light burst through the cracks, blinding, warm, alive. Her double screamed, a sound like breaking glass and 1,000 voices calling out in agony. And then, silence. Clara blinked, and suddenly, she was somewhere else. Julian heard the crash from upstairs and ran toward the bedroom. The door was splintered, shards of wood scattered like fallen leaves. Inside, Clara stood, breathing hard, eyes wild but alive. May, or whatever wore her face, was gone. For the first time, Julian felt hope. "We have to leave," Clara said urgently. "Before it comes back." Outside, the house groaned, as if waking from a long sleep. The mirrors throughout the rooms cracked and shattered, glass falling like rain. Julian grabbed Clara's hand. They ran out the front door. Behind them, the house seemed to pulse, a dark heart beating slower and slower. As they disappeared into the night, Julian looked back once. The largest mirror on the porch reflected one final image. May's face, smiling. But it wasn't May. It was something else. Julian and Clara ran down the cracked sidewalk, the night swallowing them whole. The house stood behind like a wounded beast, its windows like vacant eyes, shards of glass glittering like fallen stars scattered around the front yard. The air tasted cold, sharp, as if the house exhaled something poisonous into the dark. "Where do we go now?" Julian asked, voice low and ragged. Clara glanced back once, her breath catching. "That mirror. That thing inside, it's not bound by the house anymore," she said. "It's loose. It can follow us." Julian's heart hammered. "Then we don't stop. We don't look back." They pushed through the neighborhood, shadows stretching out like hands reaching to drag them back. Behind them, somewhere deep within the fractured house, 1,000 tiny cracks glowed faintly, like 1,000 eyes blinking awake. The thing in the mirror was patient. And hungry. Days had passed since Julian and Clara fled the house. They stayed on the move, haunted by dreams of cracked glass and whispered voices. One evening, desperate for shelter, they found themselves at the doorstep of a small, weather-beaten bookstore on the edge of town. The sign above read, "Wren's Curiosities." Inside, the air smelled of old paper and something faintly metallic. Behind the counter stood a woman, her silver hair pulled back tightly, eyes sharp and knowing. "I heard about the house," she said before they could speak. "About the mirror." Julian exchanged a glance with Clara. "You know what it is?" The woman nodded slowly. "More than most. I'm the keeper." She gestured toward a cluttered back room filled with dusty tomes and strange artifacts. "That mirror has a hunger. It's a gateway to a place beneath the world, a place that feeds on regret, fear, and forgotten truths." Clara shivered. "Can it be stopped?" The keeper's gaze darkened. "It can be contained. But only if you're willing to face what it shows you. And survive." Julian swallowed hard. "We don't have a choice, do we?" "No," she said. "Because it's coming for you." The bookstore smelled like forgotten memories, musty paper, dried herbs, and a faint metallic tang that made Clara's skin prickle. The flickering light of a single lamp cast long shadows across the worn wooden floorboards, curling around stacks of books piled precariously high like ancient towers ready to topple. Julian rubbed his eyes. "How did you know about the house? The mirror?" The keeper smiled, a thin, knowing curve that didn't reach her sharp eyes. "Stories like that don't stay hidden for long. Not here. Not when people disappear. Not when a shadow spreads." She motioned for them to sit at a cluttered table, its surface covered with faded maps, strange symbols drawn in chalk, and yellowed pages torn from books long out of print. "Mirrors are not just glass and silver," the keeper began, voice low and steady. "They are thresholds, thin places where the world we know bleeds into something else. This mirror," she tapped a cracked crystal orb sitting on the table, "is a gateway. A wound in reality." Clara swallowed hard, her fingers twitching at her sides. "What is on the other side?" The keeper's gaze darkened. A place of hollow echoes. Where regret, pain, and fear are all that remain. The mirror doesn't just show reflections, it absorbs the souls of those who look too long. It feeds on the fractures inside us. Julian leaned forward, desperate for answers. Why me? Why them? Why us? Because the mirror chooses, the keeper said. It seeks the fractured, those burdened with secrets, guilt, pain. It pulls them in, not out of cruelty, but because it needs them. It's a parasite, a wound that grows with every soul it claims. Clara's voice trembled. Is there any way to stop it? To save her? To save ourselves? The keeper's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to them. You can fight it, but it will demand a terrible price. She pulled out an old, leather-bound book from under the table and opened it to a page filled with diagrams, mirrors surrounded by runes and symbols, protective circles, and cryptic instructions. This is the ritual of binding, she explained. It can trap the darkness back behind the glass, but only if those involved confront their own deepest fears, face the parts of themselves the mirror tried to consume. Julian swallowed hard, looking at Clara. You think we can do this? Clara nodded, determination hardening her voice. We have to. The keeper stood, placing the book carefully back on the table. Good. Because it's already begun to spread beyond the house. Soon, the mirror's reach will be everywhere. Time is running out. Julian's throat tightened. What do we need to do? The keeper's smile was grim but fierce. First, prepare yourselves. Tomorrow night, we begin. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows as if the house itself was calling out in fury.